right, so 5.5, we're talking about slope. So when we're talking about slope, what I'm talking about is a rate of change. And when we're talking about slopes of lines, that rate of change is going to be constant. The slope is also how we talk about the steepness of a line. So think about like a mountain, right? We talk about how steep mountains are, and that's how like tall, or like how, slanted they are. It's the same kind of thing, like it's the slope, steepness of a line. The way we figure out slope is it's always the change in our y values. Let me give myself some more room here. So it's change in y, which is vertical, divided by our change in x, which is horizontal. Another way that you might see me write this is with some triangles. So don't let that confuse you. I'll say triangle y, triangle x. That just means it's the symbol for delta, but all that means is change. So that's a shorter way of saying that I'm talking about my change in my y values and my change in my x values. So we have a couple different ways that we find slope. So one way I can find slope is just by looking at the graph and seeing how do I get from one point to another. Well, here's the first point on my line. Here's the second point on my line. So my change in my y values, my vertical change, I go up here. So I'm going up 2 values. My horizontal change is going this direction to get from here, to get from this point over to this point. I've moved 5. So I've gone up 2 over 5. That means that my slope is 2 over 5. You may be tempted to divide this out, but do not divide it out, and here's why. What this tells me is what I need to do. This tells me that I need to go up 2 to the right 5. So if I wanted to find another point from here, I would go up 2 over 5. My next point should be about there. Right? That's how I'm going to find my next point. So that's one way. Another way is I just want to look at, well, how are my y values changing and how are my x values changing? So here are my 2 points in the second example. So my y values, so remember that as I'm writing points, it's always x comma y. So my y value starts at 5, goes up to 8. Well, my change in y then is 3, right? To get from 5 to 8, I change 3. My change in my x values then is I start at 1, I go up to 2, so my change is 1. Well, if I know that I want the change in y over the change in x, I have 3 divided by 1, that's my slope. Here's what I'm going to say. This is just 3. We know that 3 divided by 1 is just 3. Sometimes I like to leave it as 3 over 1 because this tells me what I need to do to find my next point. So if I want to find my next point, I'm going to go up 3 to the right 1. Otherwise, I may not really realize that. So here's this point here. If I go 1, 2, up 3 to the right. Oh, that's why I was confused. Okay, so I have 8 values. So to go up 3 would be 11 here, over 1 would be right here. This would be my next point, right? 3 over 1. So that's finding it from a graph. We can also find it from a table. So I have a table here of my hours and my earnings. So slope we said is a constant rate of change. So I'm looking at, is it going up by a consistent rate? And if so, what is that? So to start, I go from 0 to 10. So I add 10 here. To get from 10 to 20, I add 10 again. Looks like a constant rate, right? Add 10. Then my x values go up by 2, plus 2, another plus 2. So then if I'm talking about my change in y over my change in x, My change in y is 10. My change in x is 2. 10 divided by 2 is just 5 over 1, or 5. Okay, so that's how I find slope. Let's go ahead and turn it over. Got some practice here. So this one, I realized when it's in black and white, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So this line on the bottom here, this is you. The line on top is your friend. So the first thing that it wants me to do is look at these two lines and compare the steepness of them. So which line is steeper? Which one's more slanted? Well, my friend's is steeper. Your friend has the steeper line. Steeper. And we kind of want to compare, right? So what does that mean? Well, if you look at, I've got the value of 4 here, and I have the value of 4 here. It's steeper, and so at the same x value, after 4 hours, my friend has made more money than me. So that's what that means, is the steeper my line is, my friend makes more money. Okay, so now it wants me to find the slope of the lines. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's start with you. My change in y, my change in my y values over my change in my x values. My y values go from 20 to 40, so that changes 20. My x values go from 4 to 8. So that's a change in 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. That means that I'm making $5 every hour. My friend then starts at 28, goes to 56. So my change in y over my change in x. My change in y, that's actually just 28. My x values still go from 4 to 8, so that's a change in 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. My friend's making $7 an hour. So something that we can notice that's happening is my change in y is 20. So really what I'm doing is I'm finding the difference between them. So if I wanted to find the slope of my line a different way, I could take 20 minus 40 minus 20, and divide it by 8 minus 4. I'm finding the change in my y values and the change in my x values. It's still going to give me 20 over 4, which is 5, right? That's all I'm doing. So down here, when we're looking at some on our own, what we're doing is we're finding our change in our y values and our change in our x values. Well, my y values here are 5 and negative 1. So I can take 5 minus negative 1 divided by 3 minus negative 1. Change, right? 2 negatives make a positive. Gives me 6 over 4. And when I'm dealing with slope, I want to reduce as much as I can. So if I do that, then I have a slope of 3 over 2. I want you to go ahead and try the rest on your own. Well, maybe let's do one more. We'll do one more, and then you'll try the rest on your own. Let's look at, I guess we'll just look at the second one. So 2, 6, and 1, 5. I can do the same thing. So this time, the first time what I did is I took 5 minus negative 1, 3 minus negative 1. I went to the left. I can also go the other direction and it'll be the same way. So this time I'm going to do 6 minus 5 and 2 minus 1. So 6 minus 5 is going on the top. 2 minus 1 is going on the bottom. 6 minus 5 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. My slope is just 1. Okay, go ahead and do the other two on your own, and then come back here and check your answers with me. All right, so you should have gotten 1 for the third one, and then 3/4 for the second one. If you had 0.75 because you did it in your calculator, that's not wrong, but decimals aren't very useful when we're talking about slope, because what we're talking about slope is rise over run. How far up and over do I have to go, or down and over, to get to my next point? Well, if I had 0.75 as a slope, that doesn't really clue me in on what I need to do. So the better form of that would just to have it be in the form 3/4.